Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's last post ceremony. My name is Melanie Cassar, and joining us today from the Royal Australian Air Force is Sergeant Benjamin Rohorst. We warmly welcome the family of Private James Gardner Ceely and Private Kenneth Mathers Ceely, whose stories will be told shortly. We also warmly welcome Mr Dennis Baker, President, and Mr Peter Salter, Vice President of the 2nd 20th Australian Infantry Battalion Association, and the accompanying association members. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. We acknowledge the members of RSL and Services Club Association, RSL Victoria, and RSL Queensland, who are watching this broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the pool of reflection by family and visitors to the memorial. If you are able, please stand and join in singing the National Anthem.
Australians, oh, let us rejoice, for we are one and free, with golden soil and wealth for toil. Our home is good by sea. Our land abounds in nature's gifts of beauty, rich and rare. In history's page, let every stage advance Australia fair. In joyful strains, then let us sing, advance Australia fair.
If able, please be seated. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where family and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight we will read the story behind just two of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the pool of reflection.
Today we remember and pay tribute to Private James Gardner Ceely and Private Kenneth Mathers Ceely. James Ceely was born on the 12th of July 1910. His brother Kenneth Ceely was born on the 1st of December 1912 in Ganmain, New South Wales. Affectionately known as Jim and Ken, the brothers were part of a family of 10 children born to local farmer Robert Ceely and his wife Sarah. Jim and Ken received their education at the local public school, and on completion both gained employment as farmers. They were active members of their community and renowned as keen athletes who played cricket, tennis and football in the local region. In March of 1938, Jim Ceely married a local woman named Ruby Hoskin in a small ceremony at Ganmain Methodist Church. 2 years later, in March 1940, Ken Ceely married Annie Richardson at Matong Methodist Church. Jim and Ruby had a daughter, Beverly, in 1940, while Ken and Jane welcomed a daughter, Marlene, that same year. At the outbreak of the Second World War, Jim and Ken were living in the town of Matong with their families. Jim and Ken Ceely enlisted in the 2nd Australian Imperial Force together on the 4th of April 1941. Both were allocated the rank of private and sent to Tamworth to begin training. Jim was made acting corporal before he and Ken travelled with their comrades to Sydney. From there, they embarked for active service on the 29th of July 1941, sailing on board the troop ship Johann van Oldenbarneveld. The brothers arrived in Singapore in mid-August 1941. They were briefly separated shortly after. Jim was suffering from gastritis and had to be sent to hospital. Ken continued his training before joining the ranks of the 2nd 20th Battalion in September. He was reunited with his brother later that year when Jim was allocated to the same battalion in October. On joining his new unit, Jim reverted to the rank of private and continued to Malaya, where their battalion was preparing defensive positions in the wake of increasing tensions with Japan. On the 8th of December 1941, following the attack on Pearl Harbor, war was declared with Japan. The situation in the Pacific quickly deteriorated as Japanese units swept through the region with a series of swift victories. By the 14th of January 1942, Jim and Ken's unit had been involved in several bloody clashes with the Japanese before being forced to withdraw. By the end of the month, the unit had crossed onto Singapore and began taking up positions on the west coast of the island. Unsure whether Japanese forces might break through, Allied units were dispersed across a wide front to cover more ground. Jim and Ken's unit was thinly scattered across their sector, and when the Japanese launched their invasion on the 8th of February 1942, the Australian lines were quickly infiltrated. Though the battalion inflicted heavy casualties on the enemy during the confused fighting, it was forced to withdraw towards the Lim Chu Chang Road. Having formed a defensive perimeter, the battalion was again overwhelmed and forced to continue withdrawing. Jim and Ken's unit was eventually split into two groups of varying sizes who engaged in a desperate struggle against the Japanese as they continued their retreat. The withdrawal ended in surrender on the outskirts of Singapore City on the 15th of February 1942. As thousands of Allied troops became prisoners of the Japanese, many more remained missing in the aftermath of the battle. Among them were Privates Jim and Ken Ceely, who had not been seen since the 10th of February 1942. Much to the growing anxiety of their families, the brothers remained listed as missing in action until after the war's end. It was not until April 1946 that Jim and Ken Ceely were declared killed in action during the battle for Singapore. sometime around the 10th of February 1942. 29-year-old Ken Ceely's final resting place was never located. Today, he is commemorated on the Singapore Memorial alongside more than 20,000 others who have no known grave. Private Jim Ceely was buried at Kranji War Cemetery, where his remains lie today beneath the inscription chosen by his family. Duty nobly done, ever remembered. He was 31 years old. Jim and Ken Ceely's names are listed on the honour roll on my left, among almost 40,000 Australians who died while serving in the Second World War. Their photographs are displayed today beside the pool of reflection. These are just two of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Private James Gardner Ceely and Private Kenneth Mathers Ceely, who gave their lives for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the Ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
Lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Poziere or in the low scrub at Gallipoli with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the last post ceremony. On behalf of the Director and staff, thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial today and for your continued support of the Memorial's development project. We particularly appreciate your visit, despite the challenges posed by COVID, and wish you all a very pleasant evening. Thank you.